I read I Am Jesse Owens.
Oh, but what a no, wait, I did the same thing right after.
Can I tell you this, Brad, about the book? It may be one of my favorite and I don't know what number we're up to. I know that the series is 10 years old. I think it's 30 some odd books. It may be one of it definitely top 5. I Am Jesse Owens is fantastic. It really is.
Yeah, listen. This is now number 33 in the series of kids' books, which we started with you guys. Literally, the first interview we ever did. And the thing about it is, you can do all these stories, but some of them just jump out. It's not me. I just, all I do is relay the story. His story is so good and so beyond what I thought it was going to be. And I always say that sometimes you just get the hero for the right time. And Jesse Owens is like, every lesson is like a lesson that we need, for our kids right now, for our country right now. It's just right in there.
And I was going to say, it's easy to go, well, you know what? The timing is great because the Olympics are around the corner, and that makes sense. But you're right. With everything that's going on and what his life turns into at the Olympics and with the Olympics is so much bigger than just he's running track. It's amazing. I learned so much about him. And I was saying earlier, Brad, I know the name Jesse Owens, right? I feel like a lot of people know the name Jesse Owens. I couldn't have really told you almost anything about his upbringing, about his life, other than he was the fastest man in the world. But what a remarkable, unbelievable story. And I'll tell you this right off the bat, you know what one of my little favorite things in the book is?
Him beating Hitler?
That's up there. No, you know what? I want to give credit to Chris Eliopoulos, because you always talk about how these books are drawn where they're kids. Like they're not supposed to look like adults. They're for kids, and they're drawn through the perspective of being kids. And so the characters, the real life people, are drawn as children the whole way. I just love that he's wearing his little track suit the entire time in the book. Like the drawings are perfect for the book.
Chris, everyone always says, oh, Brad, the book. Chris is the secret weapon. The reason kids love the books is not because of me. It's Chris's art. It has that mixture of Charlie Brown meets Calvin and Hobbes. And if I want to inspire my kids, whatever, if I told my kids about Amelia Earhart, they're bored. Even Abraham Lincoln, they're bored. But when they see Chris's art drawn like a kid, just like them, then they're like, wait, this person's just like me. And Chris's art, you can see in some of the scenes, there's a scene where he puts the camera above the race, and they're looking down at the top of everyone's heads as Jesse takes off. And I'm like, this is a work of art in a regular kids book for kids. It's incredible how much better he's getting as we go.
Hey, can I ask you this? So the book starts out and you learn that Jesse Owens is the youngest of 10 kids. They're living in Oakville, Alabama. And you go on to learn, but you mentioned that when he was 5 years old, he had a bump on his chest that his mom, by the way, took off by herself. But they weren't going to the doctor. First of all, they would never have been able to afford to go to a doctor, but they were dirt poor. They all lived in a one-room house. His mom took it off herself. What was the bump?
So here's what's so crazy is the editor was like, do we have to include this part? And I'm like, we have to, because he has this bump that nobody to this day knows what it is, whether it's cancer, whether it's a growth, it's something sticking straight out of his chest. They can't afford a doctor. We don't show this part in the book. We kind of hide it because it's obviously for kids. But it says, I remember the tears in my dad's eyes. His mother is using a knife to cut it out of his chest by herself. And it's, one of the hardest moments in his life, and he gets through it. But I'm like, you have to show this for kids, for adults, for anyone to just realize what this family goes through, what the level of poverty that they're coming from is. And, to me, it's an incredible moment that I'm like, why have I never heard this about Jesse Owens? Why have I never heard this about his family? And it's just one of those things that gets lost in the footnotes of history. I'm like, we got to put it in the book.
And to this day, we don't know what that was?
Because they have no doctors. You need a doctor to know what it is. These guys were like, I mean, imagine you have a growth on your chest and your mom's like, hey, young Elliot, grab me the paring knife. I'm going to cut it off of you. You'd be like, what are you kidding? You call child services. You'd be like, but this is what saves him. This is what takes care of him he has his mother and he has his father and he has his family and they have nothing. And they build everything they have out of nothing. It said one of the details in the book is that his Christmas tree every year, his father, money's so tight that they can't afford a Christmas tree. His dad gets a free one after hauling away all the ones that haven't been sold, which means every year they don't celebrate Christmas on Christmas. They celebrate the next day. Their dad works on Christmas, and then he hauls away all the trees. They give him a free old used one, and he brings it back, and they decorate it with 3 pieces of his mom's jewelry and their tattered clothing, which means Jesse Owens grows up where his ornaments are socks on the Christmas tree.
Right.
You're just like the level of poverty that they're in. And again, this is a book. I know it's easy to say about, running and race, but it's truly about race and how much being black in the South back then, even when they moved to Ohio, what being black means. And the sad part is, it's for not just Jesse Owens and his family, but thousands and thousands of others. And I need my son to hear that story. I need my daughter to hear that story and to just know how hard it is for so many people that have lives different than their own. The books are, if they're anything, they're empathy machines.
Right.
And that's all we're trying to do is show you that.
But you talk about just going back 5 years old, go back to him getting that lump cut off of his chest. They talk about it was just a couple of days later. He's back working in the fields with his dad. And at that moment, you want to go like, oh, my God, here's a 5-year-old kid. Like you said, his mom has essentially just hatched him up in the middle of their little one-room house. 5 days later, he's out in the field. But he talks about working in the fields with his dad was one of the great things because it gave him time with his dad. And it was just time to be there and talk with his dad. I also that's where you learn his dad also was a fast guy. His dad loved running and they weren't going out and going to do anything. So his dad would set up these weekly races for all the other people that were working in the fields or couldn't do anything. What an unbelievable story.
Right. And the 2 things that I love about that is in the fields, he gets this moment where his dad just gives him advice. His dad teaches them no matter how much other people have, never envy them. That's a lesson we all need. And you can see, it's one thing to say it to your kids. When you read the book, you see it. They have nothing. The dad can't become a runner or can't join a college. He has no education. He could barely get a job. But he's watching his dad running these homemade races. He's the fastest in their county. And all Jesse Owens wants to be is just like his dad. It's just it's the American dream. There it is. And what I love is he says, for running is what he loves about it is you can do it all by yourself. It doesn't require money, just your own strength and your determination. And I will never look at running the same way again. I'm like, oh my God, right. It's the perfect sport for the poorest family. The father has nothing. He has nothing, but boy, these guys can run.
So when they finally moved to Cleveland at his junior high school, he meets a coach by the name of Charles Riley. And Riley kind of takes him, obviously can see there's something special going on. Is it true at 15 years old, Jesse Owens runs a 100-yard dash on the sidewalk that is only a half a second off of the world record time?
They don't even put him on a track, right? And what Coach Riley does is the best part of what I love about him is it's the first white man that he really knows.
Right.
And he teaches him how to be a better runner, right? And it's a time when so many treated black people differently, but they treat each other equally. And they teach each other how to be better men. And, Coach Riley says, oh, you'll come after school and I'll teach you how to run faster. And Jesse Owens is like, I have 10 jobs. I can't afford this. I have to work. He's like, fine, I'll meet you early in the morning before the sun is up. For one kid, he's taking a chance on one young black kid. And when he times him that day, he runs it in 11 seconds. And the next day he makes him do it again because he's like, the watch has to be wrong. There's no way this little kid at 15 is running it a half second shy of the world record. And he runs it at 11 seconds. The next day he realizes, I have one of the fastest kids on the entire planet that I'm lucky enough to coach here.
Where did Jesse Owens go to college?
So this is my favorite part of the book.
Can I nail it? Can I nail it? Can I nail it?
Please.
Were you a dick on purpose to Ohio State?
So no, it's not. No, it's not that. So he goes to Ohio State. Of course, I went to Michigan, and I'm not trying to be a jerk to him. Obviously, Ohio State makes him the first black captain of any varsity team. Full love for that. What is important, this has nothing to do with Ohio State, but also they make him live in a dorm without white people. He has to live in the black only dorm.
Right.
Completely ridiculous and unfair. And it's not to be jerk to Ohio State. It's to show kids listen, just because he runs fast doesn't mean we sing Kumbaya and he gets the gold medal and beats Hitler. This story's complicated. Race is complicated, and it's still complicated, right? He goes to the restaurant or the movie theater. He's the captain of the team and the star, and they still won't let him get into the movie. The part that I love most in the book, though, is his best racing is not at Ohio State. It's not even against Hitler. His single best day of racing to this day is when he runs in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I love it. And I love the only records that Jesse Owens still has to this day is when he goes to Ann Arbor. And I'm just like, oh, if you think this is not going in the book, everyone has a new guest coming.
Hey, so I don't want to rush through it, but obviously we get to the Olympics, and he makes the Olympic team, and he's going to go be in the Olympics, and we're going to have to introduce Hitler and the Nazis in a children's book. Was that a rough process to go through?
The first time we ever had to do it, we did I Am Anne Frank.
Right.
And when we did that, I'm like, how do we do that? My editor, when I said I wanted to do a kid's book about Anne Frank and the Holocaust, my editor should have said, laughed me out of the office. And instead she said to me, we're at this height, we thought back then a couple of years ago was the height of anti-Semitism. We have to do it. And what we did was I was actually very intimidated by it. I'm like, even as a Jewish person, I'm like, how do I deal with Hitler and Nazis and the Holocaust in a way that little kids can read it? So we went to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. and we talked to their experts there. We talked to people how to explain it. And, with these books, when I'm out of my league, and I know I am in this, I'm a white guy writing about Jesse Owens, and then I got to explain, Hitler and the Nazis, I go get help. I find the best people on the planet who know how to relay this to little kids. And I say, help me do this in a way that kids won't be scared, but they'll be inspired. And they also are not going to get a whitewashed version. And, to me, it's important to say that, the track and field team, so many people on there were like him. They were poor black Southerners, and that Adolf Hitler hated them because of their skin color. The German journalists won't even use Jesse Owens' name.
Right.
That they thought their win was guaranteed. And, little details like that make kids understand. They won't even call him by his name. He's less than, and he's a thing. And obviously it's intimidating, but man, you got it. You can't do the Jesse Owens story without doing the Hitler story.
So so Hitler's overseeing the Olympics. He's there to watch his Olympic squad, and who have been trained. They're going to beat the crap out of everyone in every event. And along comes Jesse Owens and really shoves it up Hitler's ass. And there's a very, and this part I feel like is known historically, but it is addressed in the book that Hitler won't shake Jesse Owens' hand at all.
Yeah, Jesse Owens is one of those stories where it has been morphed over time. Everyone says, oh, Hitler, when he won, turned away and turned his back. That never happened. Hitler just stares them. But they never invite him to shake Hitler's hand. And all the other athletes that win the gold, you better believe they go up and shake his hand. And it's the greatest FU to Hitler of all time. The only thing that gets better is that Jesse Owens doesn't stop winning. And the great part to me is not when he wins in the running races, winning the gold and, he tying the world record in the 100-meter dash. It's he goes for the long jump. And this to me is the best moment. And I did not know this moment at all personally. And I saw the movies, knew the stuff but he's the best German in the long jump is this guy, Karl Luz Long. And he's Hitler in his eyes this is the Aryan race, superiority. This is like the white, blonde, blue-eyed, handsome guy who's there to stomp on Jesse Owens And this guy is the best long jumper they've got. And they know that, he sets a new Olympic record. And, the guy should have been Jesse Owens' rival. He should have been his enemy. And when Jesse Owens jumps farther than anybody, Luz goes up to him. And you think it like in a movie, he'd like spit on him or do something terrible. He puts his hand on his shoulder. He congratulates him. And Jesse Owens puts his arm around him. And that's the greatest FU, because Adolf Hitler, they both know Hitler's watching. The crowd is watching. And that's the whole point. And in that moment, when this German and this Black American have their arms around each other, the crowd explodes.
Right.
And it's my favorite line in I Am Jesse Owens. He says, sports is about more than ability. It's about more than winning and losing. At its best, sports is about character. And I wrote that line just for my son. I was like, this is the line. You love sports so much. You watch all this stuff. You watch these overpaid athletes. But sports is not about winning and losing, Jonas. It's about character. And I want my kid to have that lesson. I want my daughter to have that lesson. I want everyone to know that's what Jesse Owens stands for, is that ability, not just to give the FU to Adolf Hitler, which is great, but to show what it is to be a good human being.
So then Jesse Owens gets to come back to the U.S. There's a huge ticker tape parade for him. He gets to ride the service elevator at the hotel. There's a very famous quote, and you put it up on, I believe I saw it was on your Instagram page, Brad, where you posted a quote from Jesse Owens that says, although I wasn't invited to shake hands with Hitler, I wasn't invited to the White House to shake hands with the president either.
I didn't know that quote when I wrote the book. I would have put it in the book. And my friend was actually just happened to be in Norway at Lillehammer this past weekend. And he knew the book was coming out. And he's like, dude, did you see this quote? And I was like, that is the most amazing, incredible quote I've ever heard about Jesse Owens, which I never knew. And they had it at the Lillehammer Olympic Museum. It's heartbreaking. And that's what I said. Race is complicated. One of the other most important details you just mentioned is the guy wins all the gold medals. He comes back. America celebrates him. Look, we're the best. We beat Hitler. We're the greatest. America's the greatest country on earth. And when they bring him to the Waldorf Astoria to celebrate him, they make him ride in the freight elevator. Again, another detail that they said, do we need to put that in the book? And I was like, we are not doing this book without putting it. Every book, the kids' book, when it's so easy to write a Jesse Owens kids book and give you the whitewashed version. I need my kids to know that they were still treating them like garbage. You don't win the race and solve racism. It's complicated. And I want my kids to know that, not just because it's a great story, but because it's like, we still have to keep fighting. It's still the story that we do all the time, is we hold it up for a day and we're like, racism's beat, but it's never. Like, you got to keep pushing forward. And I need my kids to know that too. And I love the fact that today in Berlin, Germany, there's a Jesse Owens Boulevard and a school named after him.
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing. Like, I love that, right? Adolf Hitler is like in the garbage can of history. And I love the fact that Germany's like, he's the guy, man. He's still the guy.
Why is it I can't wrap my head around, like we've all watched it. I love the Olympics, right? I love watching the Olympics. I can't wait for it to start. But why is it in my head I can't wrap my head around, like, turning on the Olympics? And obviously it was different back then, where Adolf Hitler is sitting there watching over the Olympics as, well, these are my games that are taking place. Here I sit. I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah, it's again complicated moment, right? America's like, we're gonna boycott, right? They're like, we got to boycott this. We can't do this. It's Adolf Hitler. We know what's going on, but they're also like, if we boycott, then it looks like we quit. So what's the right answer? Do we look like we quit and give him the moral win, which is exactly what he wants? He wants us to not compete. And again, it's so easy for us to sit back and judge right now, but it's hard. It's a hard thing. Like, you want to go back and to this day, like, listen, do I wish we didn't give Hitler any extra attention? Of course. But boy, do I love that we gave him the middle finger of Jesse Owens. I love the fact that he had to eat that while watching and everyone's cheering Jesse Owens' name. When they cheered his name, they couldn't say his name in the way that we say it as Americans. It's Jazzy Owens. He's like, they can't pronounce it correctly because they don't even know, because the reporters won't say his name. And they love him so much that this crowd of thousands of Germans are cheering for him and not Hitler. And to me, I'll take that any day. That's a victory, not again for America or American superiority, but just to show that Hitler's whole thesis is so messed up and is so twisted and wrong. And here's the man who's proving it to the entire world that's watching.
So, Brad, can I ask you this? I was talking to the boys yesterday, telling them that you were going to be on. We were talking about Jesse Owens in the book. And if you were to ask me at any point and somebody said, for nation sports, right? Greatest Olympic moment of all time. Everybody in my house, maybe because we're a hockey family, immediately goes to Miracle on Ice. And a lot of people will say that. Do I have that wrong? Is Jesse Owens at those games bigger than Miracle on Ice?
I think it just depends when you're watching, right? I mean, Miracle on Ice is spectacular because we're at the height of the Cold War, right? It just takes on something that's bigger than sports itself. It's not, yes, it's great to win, and we've won lots of gold medals, but we're not winning just the gold medal there.
Right.
We're proving that in the Cold War, we're better. And I guess that's a good one, but I don't know, man. Punching Adolf Hitler in the mouth I don't know how you beat it. I mean, on Captain America #1, these two Jews, and this is, Captain America #1 came out before we were committed to winning the war and beating Hitler and doing all that stuff. And the cover of Captain America #1 is Captain America punching Adolf Hitler in the face. Like, that's how subtle Jews were back then. They were just like, let's just have him punch him in the face. Like, Superman's there to stand for good, and he fights in the war effort, and you see him bending German tanks. And Simon and Lee are just like, nah, let's just punch him in the face. And that's what Jesse Owens is doing. I mean, yes, it's great. It's great to win the hockey match, but punching Hitler, man, that's A+ stuff. Captain America.
All right, a couple of other things real quickly. I know that you've already announced the next one's on the way. Will be Stephen Hawking and Sally Ride. I have a question, though. Did anyone guess who you and Chris Eliopoulos were texting about with the secret of the one that hasn't been announced yet?
Nope, no one's guessed it. One person guessed it. Well, one person did guess it. Only one. Usually on my Instagram, one person will guess it. On my Facebook, someone will guess it. Only one person on all the accounts guessed it correctly.
And you said, I'm trying to remember exactly what the DM was. It was
I said whoever guesses it first correctly, because usually a lot of people guess it. I said, if you guess it correctly, I'll DM you and tell you got it right. And I did. And I went back and forth with the guy who got it right. So what happened is, for anyone who's listening now, so out of context, I text Chris Eliopoulos, and basically a text that says, I can't wait for you to draw this next one. It's so good. It may kill you. And he literally is like, it is going to kill me. I'm like, it's going to be worth it. And it's so many styles and so many different ways that he has to draw. And only one person guessed it correctly.
When will the rest of us learn it?
I'm going to text you as soon as we hang up.
No, I don't like that. I'm not good with secrets, Brad. I'm not good with secrets.
It's so good.
All right, then text me.
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to text you. And not only am I going to text you, I'm going to text you the cover of it, because you're going to crap your pants. It's so bananas. It's so bananas. That's all I'm going to say.
Wow. So
it's him pushing so obviously in his style and in his beautiful, what all the Ordinary People Change the World books are. But it's him just, you'll see. I can't even describe it. And it physically may just kill him. If he dies, that's what's going to be the cause of death. Cause of death is going to be drawing this friggin' book.
Okay, last couple of things I have for Brad Meltzer, and I'm going to go quick. You ready?
I'm ready.
So we had talked about, and you did the graduation speech at the University of Michigan, and your son was graduating, and there was the whole debate as to whether you were stealing the spotlight from him, and on and on and on. And it was great, and it was awesome, and you brought Desmond Howard out. And the speech, if anybody hasn't watched the speech, you did such a beautiful job. It's 20 minutes. It's definitely worth watching. And the bringing out whatever happens at the end for people that haven't seen it. Is that being turned into something? Is that being turned into a book or something like that?
Yeah, so listen, I find words for a living. I will never find the ways to describe speaking in front of 70,000 people at Michigan commencement and giving a speech that's designed for one, my kid in the 14th row who got there at 8 in the morning so I could see him. And so what you can't see when you watch it is So the answer is, to answer your question, yes. We got offers from 2 different publishers. We're now making a kid's book from it and an adult book from it, because we got so many people that were writing us asking for the transcript of it. They were like, we want the transcript of this speech. So we're making an all-time graduation book. We'll probably strip the Michigan stuff out of it, but it's about the 4 types of magic and how magic really does exist and how you make magic.
It's fantastic.
But what I will say is that for the finale of the speech, and again, I won't ruin the ending because obviously there is a magic trick that's taking place during it. But when you watch me say it, what's so crazy is that some things you don't have the memory for it until after it happens, when you digest it. And one of the things that's happening in that moment is when I announced the big finale at the end, I actually physically shifted my weight forward because 70,000 people exploded in screaming, and I thought I was going to get knocked on my rear end. I was like standing in a hurricane. And then when I do the finale that gets even bigger, you can see that I'm screaming into the microphone. And it's not because I'm trying to be a good hype man for who's coming, but it's because I physically can barely hear myself, and I have access to 3 jumbotrons. Like, it is a roar like I've never heard in my life. And it was so awesome and so amazing at the end. And I could see my kid in the crowd. And when we get to the ending, I remember we have the protesters are coming down the field 8 minutes before I start. The whole thing is going crappy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's all going bad. And 8 minutes right before I go on, the protesters are marching down the field. The president of the University of Michigan looks at me and he's like, "Ma'am, why aren't they stopping?" I'm like, "Why are you asking me? You're the president of the university." I'm like, and it's all going badly. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to march to the stage. It's going to be a disaster. And Elliot, it's like they get pushed back to the 80 yards away. They take them into the end zone. There's no fight. They just make them stand in the end zone. Let them protest appropriately. It's all good. The clouds part, the sun comes through the clouds right before I go on. My sister in the audience takes a picture of the clouds and says, "Mom and Dad are looking out for you right now." Because everything is like all the I'll send you the picture that she takes of the sky like she's photographing God. Okay. and all the dominoes are going terribly. And then it's like all the dominoes get picked up and they all start falling the correct way. And it becomes one of the most truly amazing moments of my entire life. And I give this speech that's maybe one of my favorite things I've ever written. And I don't know how it's going to be exciting. I don't know anything. I'm just like trying to see if I can get the words out because of the protesters, everything that's going on. And all I'm doing during the speech is staring at my kid. And it's my son who never had a high school graduation and suddenly gets to have this graduation. And to watch the crowd react. And the thing that they reacted to, it wasn't the cheering at the end. It wasn't the Michigan stuff or yelling "Go Blue" or that we won the national championship. But it was this moment where I talk about empathy and that cruelty and venom are so common in today's society, but cruelty and venom are proof of strength. They're signs of weakness and petty insecurity. And I knew where I thought I knew where all the applause lines were. I knew when I made jokes about my rejection letters, I made that joke before. I think it's going to work. I know where all the jokes are. But when I say the words about the world needs more empathy right now, the crowd bursts into applause. And I'm like, and I try to talk over it, and I can usually talk over the crowd. You kind of can surf a big crowd, even at one like that. And I couldn't. They wouldn't let me go. And I'm like, what was that? In my mind, as I'm giving the speech, I'm like, what was that? My wife said to me, "You tapped into a vein you didn't know was there." And the world is starving for empathy right now. And the line that I love, my favorite line in the speech, it says, "If you really want to shock the world, unleash your kindness." And the place went bananas, and I realized, oh my gosh, we're starving for it right now. We need that kindness and empathy right now. So it was just one of those truly moments I'll never find the right words for.
So my next question will seem really stupid then. I was at Harris Teeter over the weekend, Brad, and I was in the cereal aisle, and I was walking down the aisle, and I took a picture with a box of Fruit Loops. Why is Toucan holding "I Am Amelia Earhart"?
By the way, greatest transition you've ever made. So can we stop for a moment? So we are on the cover of Fruit Loops. And I'm not talking about like, you know, there's sometimes like a little kid holding a book at the top.
No, Toucan.
Toucan Sam is literally holding up I Am Amelia Hart, one of the books the first book in the series. And by the way, when these things happen, you always think like, oh, you know, Brad, you made it happen. I had no idea it was happening until a month before it happened. And the publisher's like, hey, I wanted to surprise you because we didn't know if this was really going to be the final cover. Here's the final artwork. And my email pops up and Toucan Sam's holding my book. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. And they're like, no, that's the cover of Fruit Loops from now on for the next like 2 months. And I'm like, this is truly, of all the things I've been able and lucky enough and stupid enough to stumble into in my life, of all the things, if I went back in time to my 7-year-old self who used to literally watch cartoons and whose reading material was simply the back panel of a cereal box in 1977, I would have died if I saw that today. Like, if they said, here, you know, you went to the White House, you did this, you got to meet this person, blah, 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 you gave the commencement address in Michigan, my younger self would be like, so what? You're on and hanging with Toucan Sam? Boom, I dropped dead right there. That's the cause of death. Cause of death is Toucan Sam. The first Toucan Sam murder of all time.
And by the way, the other thing that's awesome, and I'm sure you know this, of course you know this, I told you I was talking to the kids about you being on today. They were like, "Oh, dude, make sure Brad knows he's in The Boys."
Oh, that was good too. That was a good trick. So this one did not. So my sons love The Boys. It's their favorite show.
Oh, it's great.
Like it's a great show. They love the show. And one of my buddies who went to Michigan is the great Eric Kripke is the guy who runs The Boys. He's literally the brainchild, the genius behind it. And last year, my kids are like, "This is my favorite show that's ever existed." They're losing their minds, and I'm like, and I'm such a jerk dad that I'm like, I got to impress my kids. All the books, nothing. They don't get whatever. I called Eric. I'm like, Eric, dude, you got to do me a solid. Can you, and he's like, my kids love The Boys. He's like, oh, I got a great idea. I'm taking care of it. It takes me a year. I know about it. I can't say a word. And he texts me right before, he texted me a couple months ago and he's like, and he just texts me, he says, it's in. I'm like, what? He's like, you'll see. And I'm watching The Boys with my boys. And all of a sudden it comes on and my kids almost fall. That's the death of theirs is The Boys. Mine is Toucan Sam. Theirs is The Boys. Like they are literally, it's the first time they've, I think ever, I took them to the real Star Wars to see Star Wars being filmed. That was, I think, the first time they were ever impressed. I took them on the real Millennium Falcon, like on the soundstage. We sat in the chair, like, but this was like a close second. It was like they lost their minds. And they were little kids, so they weren't really impressed back then. But this one, they were like, how'd you do it? How did it happen? Who do you know? Like, they were just like, tell me about it. So, yes, if you have teenage kids, it's the only thing, they're less impressed by Toucan Sam.
All right. I Am Jesse Owens is out and available now, part of the Ordinary People Change the World series. Brad, good talking to you. Please text me that cover. I have to see it.
I love you. It's coming right now.
All right, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.